Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the BombCast. I'm your host Steve Lester, and with me as always is Mr. Kevin McElroy. We are owners of Bombers and Sleeves, a clothing and lifestyle brand dedicated to the war on self-doubt, where we encourage you to bomb your boundaries and chase after your dreams. Today's special guest is producer, engineer, educator, and the owner of the Record Shop Recording Studio right here in Nashville. We got Sean Giovanni. So what do you say? Let's go and get into the show. Mr. McElroy, how we doing, my man?
Hey, doing great as always, brother. Happy to be back in the studio.
Ooh, me too.
Man, it's been a long couple of weeks since the last one. Wish we could do this daily, but you know, we're still on a...
Well, we are. We're back in the OG studio where it all began. Now, for all of our listeners knew that we were down in the warehouse for the past couple episodes, where, you know, we practice our social distancing, and we were about 20,000 leagues apart. We ran the wires up and down the walls. It was great. But, you know, it's funny. I love being back up here, but I kind of miss that old dungeony musk. You know what I mean?
It's nice, but today we had to relocate to the original location, and Steve put in a ton of work, and you're actually going to be able to see it for the first time.
That's right.
Because thanks to our special guest, he was kind enough to get this particular episode recorded. So we are literally in like a TV set studio is what it feels like at the moment. I did some extra work for the TV show Nashville when it first came to town.
That's
like
right,
on the
you
first
did.
season. This feels like I'm in a scene right there. Right
Oh,
now.
yeah. I remember seeing you on TV.
I mean, that happened one time.
Oh,
yeah, it was a one and
fantastic.
done. One and done.
Didn't they use your car on the show?
They did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulled it up through the valet.
The old
That's
Land
cool.
Rover.
Those
But you're
were
right.
the good old days.
The good old days, and it is great to be back up in here. And we even got the Wall of Frank back, old blue eyes looking down on us. Mr. Sinatra, you are my spirit animal. So y'all, we are very excited for our special guest today. Got a great guest, just killer dude. Can't wait to get to know him and just kind of peel back the layers a little bit. But before we do, I'm going to give the floor to Kevin for a minute, and we're going to update you on some Bombers news. Kev, what do we got going on, man?
Yeah, man. So feeling thankful, you know, through the pandemic and everything, especially for a small business like us, that could have just wiped us out. But, you know, thankfully, we have found a way to kind of keep our costs down and stay afloat through this whole time, and have actually met and made connections with more people than we did last year in a more meaningful and impactful way, which has been awesome. So last time I updated you guys on the deal that we struck with Music City Boxing, which is still going great. We got some merchandise up in there. If you guys are local in Nashville, I just want to remind you again to check out Music City Boxing over in the Nations. Fantastic facility. I mean, like I said last time, real down and dirty, Rocky type gym, full-size Olympic ring, all that good stuff. Anyway, so we still got some merchandise hanging up in there, and it's been selling. So thank you. If we have any new listeners from Music City Boxing that are checking us out, Steve and I cannot thank you enough for your support. That is really, really cool.
Thank you.
You guys have, I mean, you don't even understand like how far just one t-shirt sale goes for us at the beginning stages here. So it means a lot. It's helpful. It's awesome. And like I said last time, you know, we talked about our 6-1 vibe piece, which is unique to Nashville, and you know how we would be eventually launching a collaboration T-shirt with Music City Boxing, with our logo on one sleeve and their logo on the other, and that is going to go to benefit their youth boxing program. Well, so after that, you know, I was thinking some more. That's actually a scalable idea. We can, you know, 6-1 Vibe, as you guys know, is intended to eventually become a nonprofit organization of its own that gives back to you know, local businesses and creatives and things like that. So with this deal with Music City Boxing, it got me thinking, you know, you can actually take that around to a bunch of different businesses and offer that same type of pitch. Say, hey, you know, we'll split production costs and do a co-branded 6-1 Vibe shirt, and then take the net proceeds of that and give it to whatever charity that you guys care about, or you know, ideally a charity that we both care about. And so with that being said, we were reached out to by another local business, East Nashville Beard and Barber, who used to be Nashville Beard and Barber, but they dissolved, and the owner Kevin started East Nashville Beard and Barber. Well, so he reached out and said that he loves the company, loves to support local businesses, and like to buy some shirts from us for his barbers. So we were like, yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. Do you mind if we come down and drop it off in person and discuss this idea we have for co-branding our 6-1 Vibe product, and see if you guys are interested in that too? And so Kevin, the owner, is like, yeah, cool. So just the other day, Steve and I went down there. Super cool team of barbers that he's got there. It's him and 3 others.
Cool people.
We rolled up like traveling Bible salesmen or
Black
whatever.
bag.
Yeah,
black bag.
Black duffel. Roll in there, literally display the products. First of all, we walk in there, super cool vibe. He offers us these little pony size Miller High Lifes.
Champagne beers.
Yeah, man. Sit down, crack a couple, and literally just lay out all the product on some of the chairs that he has in the waiting room there. And all the barbers are super stoked on it, including one of the customers in there bought one too, which was cool. So at the end of it, we were talking to Kevin about doing the co-branding thing, and he was stoked on it as well. So the point of all this is now we have 2 businesses on board that we get to help, give back through the 615 mission, and by giving back to a charity. So we're going to release it with Music City Boxing first, but then the next round is going to be with East Nashville Beard and Barber. So that's exciting, man. I mean, for something that was just kind of maybe one day we'll get some time to focus on getting the nonprofit side of 615 going, has now been moved to the front of the line, and organically it's coming up and is being received very well. So that's exciting, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm so excited to work with, but just both of these companies and just see what we can dream up together, man. It's amazing how what you said, like just organically, it's just kind of happening, and people are trying to help out small businesses and come together right here in Nashville, man. This is Music City. It's such a wonderful community here, and it's nice to be able to reach out to some of our neighbors and get some shit done with them,
It really is, man. And what's crazy is the owner, Kevin, we used to be at Pioneer Barbershop over in the Gulch, and was actually the guy was right across from the place where I got married in 2016. And he was actually the same barber that gave us all a shave before the wedding. It was my treat to Steve was one of my groomsmen and the rest of them to like go over to this nice Pioneer Barbershop. Was like a nice like old school kind of place. I don't know if it's still there or not, but anyway, you did like the straight razor shave, and it was a cool like little experience for us. Well, this same guy Kevin now owns East Nashville Beard and Barber. I didn't recognize him at first, but he's like, man, you look really familiar. And then later when I got home, I was like, just checked his Instagram real quick and saw that he used to work there, and I was like, dude, I think you were the guy. He's like,
you were the guy.
He's like, nah, I was definitely the guy.
You were the guy that turned beast into beauty so I could marry my wife.
Dude, it was rad. So that's just another testament to like how small of a town we have here in Nashville, which I know our guest, Mr. Gio, can definitely attest to as well. But
dude, totally. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for updating our listeners.
Man, that's the news.
And man, that is the
minutes,
news
if you will,
for the day, y'all. Okay, we got a killer guest for you today. Record producer, audio engineer, product manager, educator, and owner of the Record Shop Recording Studios. He's worked with a variety of genres. He has the privilege to, or has had the privilege to work with artists such as John Legend, Juicy J, Big and Rich, Tim McGraw, Zach Wilde, and the Wallflowers. Ooh, some of my faves in there. He's also the co-owner of a music industry-focused mindset development platform called Mind Map, which helps creatives achieve artistic prosperity through mental conditioning and emotional fitness. Yo, can't wait to get into that. Y'all give it up for Mr. Sean Giovanni.
What up?
What's up, brother?
What's happening? Glad to be here.
Yeah,
whoever
man.
that guy is you're talking about, I want to hang out with him. He sounds pretty cool.
He's the tops. Yo, I love saying your name, Giovanni.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It rolls right off the tongue, dude. So we got a lot to cover today. You're an interesting guy. You got a lot of amazing things going on. As I mentioned in the intro, you have a hell of a laundry list of people you've worked with and collaborated with. So let's maybe start by taking it back a little bit and share some of your journey, man. I mean, you come here to Nashville maybe 14, 15 years ago, and to now where you start your own recording and multimedia production company. I want to know all about that. I want to know about that ride, and also how you were able to build just such this beautiful, client base to what, and got it to what it is today. Can you take us on that ride a little bit, brother?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, it started back when I was a young kid, and my dad was just a huge fan of music. He would drive me to school or like hockey practice, or we'd be going anywhere, and he'd always have a different CD on, some different kind of music he was listening to. and his musical taste was very eclectic, and mine started to become very eclectic. And through that, I started to, I think, looking back on it, started to appreciate music for the experience that it could support, and different styles of music could support different types of experiences in our life. And I really fell in love with the idea of how music makes us feel. And that evolved over time into me being interested in the idea of being able to be a part of that creative process, to be in the studio, and these types of experiences are being captured that are then going to have such a massive impact on people. And so I started that journey really young, around 12 years old. Was the first time that I got into any sort of recording. It started by me getting into DJing. And I was really excited about this DJ that I saw on MTV Spring Break, DJ Scribble. And he was up there rocking the crowd, Cancun, you know, everybody's going crazy. And I was like, that guy looks cool, and I would love to do that. Yeah. And then I got into the whole background of DJing, specifically in the hip hop culture. And I loved the idea of bringing all these different types of art together. So the breakdancing, the graffiti, the DJing, the MC, the storytelling that was happening, and the parties that would happen around it, and the energy, and bringing people together to, to collaborate in really unique ways. So I got really passionate about that when I was young, and got into DJing. And then I wanted to start being able to record myself as a DJ and record like the mixes and the little like mashups that I was putting together. So I saved up some money and got a little 4-track cassette recorder, and that was the beginning of recording. And then so through middle school and high school, I just dove deeper and deeper into that. And eventually, like in high school, I set up a little makeshift like studio / DJ / party room thing in my parents' basement, and just loved it. And then as you're going through high school, you're figuring out what are you going to do with your life, and do you go to college? Do you get a degree? Do you get a real job? And music, for me, was like always the thing. I was going to figure out a way to do it one way or another. And so in high school, I had to make the decision of how to figure that out. And my thought process at first was to do what the people that I looked up to had done back in the day. And you go and you get a job sweeping the floors at a studio. You work your way up and climb the ladder, and then, try to make a name for yourself. But the time that I graduated from high school, was right before the big recession that happened. The economy in general was tough. The economy in Detroit was probably the worst. And the music industry was struggling, and the whole idea of that apprenticeship model in the business was really starting to go away. And what was popping up was recording schools. So as I started to research and learn about this, I was told by a bunch of different studio managers, like, if you want to get in this business, you got to go get a degree. And so I went to a small recording school in Minneapolis and got a lot of experience with a lot of different types of equipment. But I wouldn't say that degree was really necessary, which I learned later on. It was a little bit of a facade. But anyway, I went through that whole process, and then eventually, when I got out, I graduated from that program and needed to figure out where to go. And I looked at New York, LA, and Nashville. I figured those were really like the 3 options for me because of my goals for my career. And I ended up landing on Nashville because of the energy and the vibe and the conversations that I had with people. And I moved here for a job at a recording studio here in town. And so I packed up my truck and moved down here. I was 19 and got a place on Music Row, a little apartment above some offices, and showed up to the studio for the first day. And I found out that I was not able to take that internship that was supposed to lead to the job because of the school that I went to and this internship program miscommunication thing that had happened. And the school didn't offer the types of requirements that were necessary for that label to hire me as an intern and then the assistant. So that was a pretty big shock and blow to things. And luckily the guy that was the manager there became a really great mentor of mine, and he gave me a lot of hope and said, look at all the stuff that you've done already. You packed up, you moved here, you're here, you're clearly very passionate about this. You can figure it out. You just got to stick with it, and it's going to take a long time. And you just have to be realistic about that. And I moved here with just like giant hopes and dreams and thinking about the fact like, well, who else has been working at this since they were 12 years old and always knew what they wanted to do? Well, come to find out, like everybody.
Yeah.
And
their mother.
Yeah, totally. So it was a pretty big shock, and the idea of how I thought a career in the recording industry was supposed to go was just sort of pulled apart and shattered. But the great thing that came out of that was that I never got that job, and that I was pushed into this position to make a decision about either moving on into a different direction in my life, which I was not willing to do, or to figure out a way to make it work one way or another. And that was what started the record shop, was the idea of me being able to start a business for myself, because I needed to find my own work, because there wasn't the opportunity for employment in a traditional model.
Nice. So when you first came to that realization, like in terms of like sourcing your first clients, what was that process like for you?
It was going out every night. It started this way, just going to anywhere that people were performing music. And I figured if there's shows happening, there's probably people around that you can meet and make connections with. I'm not generally the guy that like walks into the bar and makes friends with everybody.
Right.
What do they call that? Like a very open introvert, you know?
Yeah, me too, bro. Yeah.
Like I love hanging out and talking with people and having like thoughtful discussions and stuff, but I'm not a great small talker, and like can't like just jump up and like make friends with everybody.
Right.
I've become better at doing that, I think. But back then it was tough to just, I didn't know a single person. I was here by myself, and just to like walk down the street and just walk into some place and start to make friends was like super overwhelming. But my whole thought process was, this is what you got to do. And there's no way that no one's going to hand any work to you. And if you want work, you're going to have to go meet people. So that became like the thing to push me over that sort of fear or like uncomfortable thing of just like striking up conversations with people. My thought was like, what I told myself, every conversation you have is another opportunity for the potential to build a relationship that's going to move you forward in your career. And it pushed me past that fear. And beyond those boundaries that I was setting up for myself. Yeah. And so that's how it started, was just going out and, and meeting folks. I also posted advertisements on Craigslist.
Nice.
I tried to network with people on MySpace. It's all like, old school stuff back in the day.
Because this was 2010, you said, right?
No, 2006.
2006. Okay, yeah. So no option but MySpace.
Yep. Yeah. MySpace and Craigslist, man. That was
you and Tom.
That was the deal. But it was really the greatest things came from just going out and meeting folks. And that's the beauty about the community in Nashville. There's a small area where a bunch of venues are all kind of packed together, and you can walk up and down and check out a bunch of different places. And there's a really great community. And then you start to see the similar people, so you're going out every night, and you'll see similar people at different places, and you start to figure out where some of the popular spots are. And I was able to start to make some good connections. But that didn't lead to very much work right away. And so I started to learn out of those conversations why that wouldn't necessarily lead to work. One of the things that at first I was trying to focus on the places that were like the most popular. And at those places, it's a real, like, everyone is there, focused networking sort of hang. And the people that are on the stage are not going to work with someone like me that does no resume and is brand new to town and no connections. I don't have any like leverage to like pitch myself to someone other than like, I'm really passionate and I'd love to work with you, which is great in theory, but it's just realistically not going to lead to work right away. So I started to be more focused on the places that I would go. And one of my processes was going and picking up the Nashville scene every week. And I would go through the list of shows. And then I would jump online, and I would find like a writer's night in a small like coffee shop or club or something. And then I would go online and research every single writer that was playing. And I would specifically target people whose music I liked first and foremost, who were either new to town or seemed to be kind of building their career still, hadn't recently released something at a really like high level. Maybe they had like some demos online, but they seemed to be like me. We could connect in a way because we have similar experience and we're new to town. They don't have all those resources yet. And that led to more consistent work pretty quickly, which was a really, really great thing. And so I started to build a really pretty solid client base. The other really great thing that happened was that I connected with a woman that was here in town, and she grew up here, really tied into the community, and super tied into the hip hop community. Nice. And I grew up in Detroit, huge hip hop fan, and had spent a lot of time recording different hip hop artists, and I had a lot of experience with that. And I found that there weren't really any commercial studios that specifically catered towards that genre, but there were a lot of artists that wanted to create music, and they were sort of stuck working in makeshift studio environments without not having like engineers that were really competent with the technical side of things, but they were just kind of figuring it out, And so this woman started connecting me with a lot of her friends, and I got really tied into that community. And within a few months, like, I was just booked. I just kept getting calls, and people kept showing up, and like they loved the vibe, and they told their friends, and they brought more people back, and it was great. So I started to find like that niche market, and I found this other like niche market in the new to town singer-songwriter sort of people that were similar to me as far as like resources went. And that was really the starting point of where I went out to start to find those first clients. And then just, over time, just it continues to grow.
Dude, that's awesome, man. There's a lot there that we can start to unpack. The biggest things I heard was like, the first thing is like, fear is inevitable. It's gonna slap you in the face the second you decide to go after something like you dream of, like when you chase your dreams. The second thing that really stuck out as the overall theme of that part right there is like just being resourceful, man, and using your resources. Because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with they go to that place and they're like, okay, they have that realization that everyone up on the stage doesn't want to work with you because your resume is just not there yet. But instead of stopping there, you can be resourceful and find different ways to like be creative and get that first step and get that in the door. So
yeah, it's so funny too, man. Like, just I could imagine you said you're an open introvert, but like the first couple times you go out and you're just trying to meet people, it's a little awkward. But then the second time it's probably still a little awkward, but not as bad. And then by maybe the 6th, 7th time, you're throwing yourself out there, you're getting uncomfortable. All of a sudden, I mean, look at what you just said. You're meeting people, you're creating this kind of network of people, you're building this kind of camp. And that's really important for our listeners, is to get uncomfortable as possible.
Absolutely.
And especially when you were here. I mean, one of our past guests was talking about just, kind of building with your camp and rising together. What are your thoughts on that? Like, instead of maybe trying to fight to get into the rooms with people that already have the deals and all this, but like finding people you actually gel with, you love creating with and want to work with. Like, how important is that? Like, is that kind of the rise to success, you think?
Well, and yeah, sorry to cut you off, because I also wanted to add to that. What I loved about that story is like, you didn't conform to like be a country recording artist.
Absolutely.
You went with what you loved and what you know, which was hip hop, and found that organic connection there. So to stay true to yourself right from the jump works out for that exact reason.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with the building with the camp, type of thing. And I think that it can open up more opportunities as well. You find those people that you work with, and as everyone is growing, then it opens up your resources. And that's really where some of my biggest first opportunities came from, was people that I started with all in the same place, like at the bottom. And then we'd come up, and there was a rock band that I was working with called Stone Crossing. It was a really popular, like, local band here in town. And they got a management deal. That management company was tied in with a studio, and they wanted the EP to be cut at their studio. So I got pulled in to be able to help out with the studio, and the manager there, Pat, was just super, like, welcomed me with open arms. And while I didn't necessarily take on like the full role of everything on their record right away, I was still able to hang with them and be a part of it, meet them, and then I was able to start using that studio with my own clients. And it was a really big turning point for me to get out of like an apartment studio setup into like a legit spot. But before, I was in a place where I was working with artists that had the budget for that sort of thing. And so like those sort of connections just came from like starting with one place, finding the people that you really gel with, and then it growing. And that idea of getting over yourself and getting over fear and diving into things, it becomes easier, but then it also becomes more inspiring to push through things that are fearful after you see the result of what happens from pushing past that fear. As an example, you go out and it's a little bit uncomfortable to just walk up to someone and start a conversation. You do that a handful of times, you get more comfortable, and then eventually one of those conversations leads to a really awesome opportunity. And then you see how wonderful that feels to push past that fear. And on the other side of that can be something pretty amazing. And then you can take that and apply it to really like any other thing that you are a little bit drawn back to, or that makes you feel uncomfortable, but just push farther into those things that are uncomfortable. And the more that I've done that, the more that I've just seen like opportunities, blow up out of it. And we're able to continue to grow that way.
Yeah, God, I love that, dude. Because it seems like I can't remember where I heard this, but I heard on some podcast that like it was a business related podcast. They were saying that same thing. Like the work comes before the belief. Like if you don't believe in yourself right away, try taking those first steps and doing that work, because that's where the confidence comes from. And just like you said, you get one small win there. Now that next time you step out of your comfort zone, so to speak, it becomes that much easier because you have small wins behind you and you start to gain that momentum. It sounds like what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, dude.
When you work with a lot of artists, but especially when it comes down to like newer artists, musicians, bands. I mean, I for songwriting, there's a lot of people, and even in my community, that still hate going out and, let's say, networking. They're just like, I'm not good at it. It's uncomfortable. Do I really have to do it? Because to them, it's a pain in the ass. But I think that's what separates, success from from them and other people, is because there are people willing to do that and actually get uncomfortable and are willing to do that. So when you're working with these new people and they're like, well, I mean, I don't know if they're telling you this, but if they're a little bit uncomfortable with that, like, what do you tell them?
How bad do you want it?
Exactly.
It's a really easy answer. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
If you really want it, and there's no question about it, like there was for me, there hadn't been since I was 12 years old. There's nothing that's going to stop me from going after that, because that's what I feel like I'm here for. And I have a purpose that's beyond money or fame or like notoriety. My purpose is that art will outlast us, the creation of it. And I want to be able to create art that can do that, to be able to leave the earth and have something that outlasts me, that's powerful, and that has had a massive impact on people. And I found that purpose really early on, and I used it to push through all of those things. And every time that I face adversity or a really challenging situation, or I'm run the risk of not doing my best, or like saying, well, this is good enough, we'll let it slide, I'm kind of running out of time and we don't have the budget for this or whatever, I push through and put in the extra hours to make it happen, because that's what my goal is. And in doing that, I think that it pushes you to work, at a higher level. Everyone's, purpose may be different, but that was what mine was. And I found that I was really fortunate to find that early on. It came from a quote from a philosopher named William James, who said the best use of life is to use it for something that outlasts it. And when I read that, it just I just sort of stopped and read it again and was like, oh my God, it just spoke to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I saw immediately how it connected to what my passion was for making music. And it gave me this deeper purpose that was way far beyond me. And has made it really easy to push past anything. If there's any question about is this really worth it? Should I dive it? That doesn't even cross my mind, because at this point, my subconscious is just trained to be like, this is the bar that you set for yourself, and you just have to keep, going after it. Yeah. And diving in. When people say that they're not good at things, I often ask, well, how often have you tried it, and how much did you go after it? A lot, it's very natural for us as creatives to be like, man, business, I'm not really good at that. It feels like this weird salesy thing, and I just want to make art, which is awesome and true. We do want to make art that's authentic, but in order to do that, we still have to be able to generate income from it to survive. And there is a business aspect, incorporated with it. Sure. But that business aspect can become really creative. It doesn't have to be like a car salesman, and it doesn't have to be really dry, like maybe some job that we wouldn't want to have if we failed at music or something. It can be very creative, and it can be a lot of fun. And I think when you look at it from that deeper purpose or larger purpose sort of thing, then you can start to think creatively, around it. So yeah, networking is not fun, and I don't network. I build relationships. I authentically want to go out and meet people that I like and I enjoy being around, because I know that if I can find like-minded, similar people that have similar interests and are authentic, then they're going to attract more of those people around me. And then, my whole frequency in life is going to continue to rise, and, and things will grow. So yeah, network, going out and just networking and handing out business cards and just blindly. Yeah, that's boring. It sucks. And it's not going to get you anywhere either. Totally. But being really excited about interacting with people and hearing people's stories, and then getting creative on how was a big turning point for me, was instead of just trying to make relationships to see what opportunity might be there, I just started, every time I had a conversation, my mind goes to how can I help this person with whatever they're doing. And it doesn't even have to be with music. It could be totally different business, but maybe I have a resource or connection somewhere. And it is insane how the world works in crazy ways, and these random connections where you help somebody out in some small way ends up paying itself back tenfold in the value that you're offering to other people. So when I start
Totally
those
agree.
conversations, it's immediately where my mind goes. It's not to what can this do for me. It's how can I help this person? And, in doing that, you build a deeper relationship. And over time, especially if you're in a place like Nashville, that's just, you're surrounded by people that are passionate about music and building careers and that sort of thing. Like, it's almost impossible to like build a relationship with someone, then have that not turn into some sort of opportunity at some point,
100%.
But if you're always about like, well, how is this going to help me? And like only answer the phone or only call when there's something that you need, instead of just like being a friend and like, and building, a really like legit relationship, or just trying to really like reach for an opportunity, as opposed to getting creative and thinking about like, how can I purposely be of value to this individual based on, and being interested about, what I'm learning about them. And that has to be authentic, because when it's not authentic, it comes across like it's pretty clear, but I think that's where it should be focused, is how can I provide value first?
Yeah, 100%, dude. I absolutely love that, man. And that's like, that's like as cold hard of a fact as gravity is, man. It's just like, it's one of those fundamental things, dude. Because we can all, it's like an energy signature, man. When someone's just trying to take something from you, you're like, I don't know, even if they're nice and cordial, it's like, what the no, dude. Yeah, you definitely know. And then, so that's like, obviously we don't know each other that well just yet, but like I can already tell that you just innately have those qualities about you. But do you innately have those, like being a go-giver, as they call it? You have like that giving spirit to you, obviously. Like you're giving us an experience we've never had before by bringing a videographer in here, and that's a huge value for us, man. And I'm just like, I've been thinking the whole week, I was like, how can we like help Gio back and like give that back, to you as well, man, and like develop a long lasting relationship out of this moment. So we're sitting in the example of it right now. But my question is like, so, I get the sense that you are innately like that type of person, but have you worked on like honing that skill of finding like how you can bring value to people in like a methodical way outside of that? And if so, how?
Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe I've been that way because of the way that my parents raised me, and just, being someone of support and being of service. And there were plenty of examples in like middle school and high school where I would donate my time to, to support. I think a lot of that comes from like playing sports growing up too.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a lot of community around that. And there's a lot that we get taught, just like, principles on supporting each other and being of service to the group and to the whole. And, it starts as a team, but then, as a kid, you start to understand now this is like being a part of your community and support, that becomes your team as an adult, and, and that kind of thing. So I think a lot of it was just environment that I was around, and choosing to be involved in athletics. And that I think played a big role in it. But when I moved to town, and this first like opportunity that I moved here for fell through, and I started trying to figure out how the hell am I going to survive, I went and like bought every business book I could find on like entrepreneurship, and even like on like sales and building a brand and marketing, and just really trying to figure out like how to self-starters like market themselves and try to build a business. And the common thread that I continued to see across the board with that sort of stuff was provide value first. And so it was definitely like, I think that I am that type of person that wants to go out and, and give, but I also learned from that, the value that it can have from a business standpoint as well.
Right.
And how it can build with, with relationships. So that was definitely like a starting point for it. I don't know that there's necessarily like a methodology out of it, other than just being aware of the value of it.
Sure.
And then just looking for that opportunity. And what I found is that over time, now it's just part of how I think. It's just become natural. But like 14 years ago, it was not natural. That was something that I was reading in a book about, and was like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. I need to stop calling these managers of studios and asking them for work. And I need to start thinking about how can I be of specific value to them. And then once I started doing that, amazing opportunities started to, to come together. And so the more that I had those experiences, the more you start to get creative and see the sort of like things that can work and where those things can align. And then the more that you do that, the more that you build this wider pool of resources to then, like, every person that you meet, you can start to find these interlinking, connections with that can be valuable to to different people. So I think it's more of just a long-term play of learning, getting experience, and just training yourself to be sort of focused on that. The same way that a songwriter becomes naturally focused on being in a conversation or, sitting in a bar and hearing someone say something behind them and then like quickly writing it down and being like, that is a song. And I'm going to go home and write that, you know?
Guilty.
Yeah.
My worst thing is I always tell Kevin this is like cinema, like movies. Like my wife yells at me because I'll be sitting there watching a movie and they'll say something just magical and I'm like, oh, that's an idea for a song. And she just yells at me, you're ruining the movie. I do this in the theater. I do this on date night. And believe me, it doesn't go over well, but that's just where our minds go, you know?
I know. Absolutely. My wife and I were watching the Jordan documentary last week, and Phil Jackson. Oh, now I'm gonna forget the quote. Phil Jackson said, "You're only successful in the moment.
Yeah.
As soon as that moment passes, you're no longer successful. Now you're back to working towards being successful." And so I heard him say that, and then like 3 seconds later, I paused it, and she was like, "I knew you were going to do that." And I rewinded it and wrote it down word for word.
Yeah,
and put it in.
No shame.
Yeah, put it in my book of thoughts. Yeah, and she turned over and she was like, "I knew that's what you were doing."
That's awesome, man. So you do have like a formal journal or a book of thoughts, as you call it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I have all kinds of them because I'll be in different environments. But yeah, I'm a big fan of writing things down. Just in general, you know, I don't type up lyrics, like I write them down. I think it engages our subconscious. I know that it engages our subconscious mind in a different way.
It does. Yeah.
I write down my goals. I write them down and then I read them aloud. Really focused on that, you know, that type of thought process. When I come up with ideas, I'm jotting them down. If I don't have like a notebook with me and I'm sort of just like kind of on the move, like I have a bunch of different categories of notes in my phone. But then I'll take those and like transcribe them down and write them. And that came from my high school math teacher.
No way.
She was the first. So like when I was a kid, my biggest problem was math because I was so defiant about it. Wasn't that I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I was so defiant about the fact that I did not need to know this nonsense.
Yeah.
There was I was like, I'm going to be a musician. There is no reason that I need to understand calculus. It doesn't matter. And so when I was in middle school, one of my math teachers made the mistake of putting this poster on the wall that had all of the different types of math and the occupations that corresponded with those. And whoever made this poster was an idiot because he put musician on it, and it basically was like it was like a plus and minus and like multiplication and division. Mm-hmm. And I was like, see, I already learned that when I was like in third grade. We're good. I don't need to be in this class anymore. I got sent right down to the principal's office.
Nice.
But I finally had a math teacher.
Valid point though.
And yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
But I finally had a math teacher in high school that saw that in me, like saw that like she understood my perspective in it, like, and at that point I was a little more mature, like I was definitely trying, like I wanted to get, you know, the grades and like, and that became more of the thing of like achieving something as opposed to whether I cared about it or not. But I was still not very like focused on it, you know, at all. I just couldn't be, like that wasn't my passion. And so she saw that and she bought me a journal. And one day she stopped me after class and said, "Hey, I know that you're really passionate about music and writing, you know, and art, and I know that these classes are not interesting to you at all. And I appreciate that. That's fine. But here's something that I think could be really valuable for you. Take this journal and just write in it every day. And I think it'll bring you a lot of like clarity and you know, and peace of mind and like that sort of thing." And she said it can be really valuable for the creative spirit and just also for like your mindset and like in general. It was amazing. And so ever since she gave that to me, I had a journal like all through high school, all through college. I still have them, and I would write like every day, like all the stuff that happens, and and then I would write songs and write poetry and all kinds of different stuff in it. But I would also just sit down and like write what happened that day. And as a teenager, that was a really helpful expression, like healthy expression, to be able to get like the, you know, the stuff that you go through at that age, you know, out. But I started to learn like how that really helped. And then as I started from writing songs, and so I'd be able to start memorizing lyrics just after writing them down once, and I learned a lot about that. So that whole process is just, you know, continued on and stuff. Probably the most beautiful thing that came out of that journal is that I wrote down the night that I met my now wife.
Wow,
when we were in
dude.
high school.
That's
and
crazy.
I came home that night I was 15, and I said, I met the most amazing girl at this party tonight. I feel like she's like my soulmate. I want to marry her someday. Just insane, right? And we went to different schools. Like she stayed in Michigan. I went to Minneapolis. I moved here. We stayed friends, but then like years later we got together and now we're married.
That's
and
crazy.
so like that whole like thing came from that.
Man.
So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beauty of writing stuff down, right?
Yeah,
I
man.
don't know if that's manifesting
Wow.
something, but we're together now. And it's incredible.
No, man, I think it's hugely powerful, man. It really is. Like, have you done The Artist Way by Julia Cameron? Have you worked through that?
I have not, no, but I
Yeah.
know about it, and very, very familiar with it.
Yeah, the whole the morning pages is like
Yeah.
the big takeaway from that.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing, man. Just every day, just freehand 3 full pages of just free form thought. And I when I went through it, it was very therapeutic. I got out of the habit, but I really definitely want to get back into it. But super powerful for the creative spirit. And yeah, dude, crazy things kind of come out of have the potential of coming out of what you write.
Yeah.
What a gift from your teacher, man. That's profound.
Yeah, where was
dude.
she
Amazing.
when I was in
Yeah,
school?
yeah.
I was
Right.
shitty at math, and they just, it was parent teacher conferences saying this kid's he's not gonna graduate. That's what I got.
Yeah.
I purposely took because I was a communication major in college. I didn't know I knew I wanted to do music, but I was like, why am I at school? They said you didn't have to take a math class, but you have to take a language class. So I took about 4 years of Spanish. Now I don't remember any of the Spanish, but it definitely beat taking math. But what a great gift that obviously kept on giving.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Beauty of writing things down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude, I want to actually go a little bit backwards because, you said you chose Nashville because it just had this vibe. It had this community, right? Well, the funny thing is, my wife asked me today, she goes, well, who's your guest going to be? And I said, it's Sean Giovanni. And she goes, well, Sean Giovanni. I said, I know Giovanni. I know this guy. And it was crazy. My wife used to do music back in the day. And just, you bet you guys been here a while. And she's like, I know that guy. He was DJing at Graham Central Station. I love that guy. And just sang your praises, like I said.
That's awesome.
And it's awesome. But my question is, too, you've been here a little bit. Now, when you're meeting all these new young aspiring artists, songwriters, bands, musicians, and they're coming to you like, because we have this influx here in Nashville, like 100 people a day, we're moving here, for a couple summers and stuff. My question is, are we, that vibe that you're talking about that kind of made it special, is it slowly fading because we have such a mad influx of people, or is it just more beast to fill like a bigger arena? Like, does that vibe still very much present here in Nashville, you think?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a little bit of a challenging question to answer because I've been here for so long. So like I have my roots here now. And while I'm always meeting new people and very excited to, I still have that same feeling of community because now I'm like in the community as opposed to being like new to the community and seeing that the community exists. So I'm not sure what it would be like if I moved here now versus when I did move here, but I haven't personally experienced a massive difference in the way that people treat each other or the support. I've never experienced a like inappropriate level of like competition where people are trying to push each other down. Like there's just a lot of support and a lot of community and a lot of great groups that are coming out, and like companies like yours that have like great purpose and focused on community and, and support. So I feel like the city has grown a ton, and I think that that's awesome. I think it's great. I think it just leads to bringing more people in and bringing more opportunity. And yeah, it's great. I think the opportunity exists for the people that are going to go out and seek it. It's, it's always there. I will say that something that I was thinking about last night is I was talking to an intern that just started working for me, and I had him do his first session on his own last night. And I was thinking about what I would hear when I was in school about how challenging it was to break into the industry. And they'd say, man, like all the commercial studios are shutting down. Like there's really not like the jobs there used to be. You're really going to have to grind it out and hustle and, and go after it. And then, a few years later, they're like, well, all the home studios are taking over, and, you better figure out a way to get involved in that. 'Cause like real big studios don't exist anymore, which is not true. And then, you move to town now and they say, man, there's how many hundreds of people moving here every week. And it's just oversaturated, and, we can't get artists to, they can't afford anything, and there's not enough money in the recording industry. At the same time, I've been very fortunate to be able to do pretty well. And there's plenty of people that I've seen that are continue to do very well. And the opportunity is still there. And there's still the people that are saying how impossible it is, not just challenging, but like, man, you better just figure out something else. And so I think that it has to do a little bit with just like the type of energy that you allow to like, to be around you. I just won't allow the opportunity for something to be impossible. I'm going to figure out how to do it, or I'm going to go and seek out somebody that's done it and look at that and just tell myself, okay, well, no more excuses, because if they've made it happen, then there's no reason that I can't.
Right, dude. And that brings up something that I've really been thinking a lot about. And it's this concept, maybe it's a myth, maybe there's some truth to it, but I call it like getting big leagued. So, and I think it can be an ideology, but I think it can also be like something that maybe happens. But now that you said that, I'm starting to question it. And what I mean by being big leagued is like, oh, like you're too inexperienced for this, or stuff's moving this way, we're going from studios to home studios, or it's really hard to break into this. Things that give that feeling and emotion of like you're trying to get to the big leagues, right, to the NFL or the NBA, like, oh, you like, this is too big, this is for someone else and not for you. But what do you think of that? Is there such thing as like as that? And then B, do you think it's as easy to overcome as what you just said? Like, nothing is going to stand in my way if I believe that nothing will stand in my way?
Yeah, I believe that because that was my experience. So totally, that's the only like truth that I can share, because that was the experience that I had. I don't think that you can just say it and have it happen. You have to back it up with action. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that like, and just really get in the habit of like that there can't be an excuse why. And that's a really challenging thing that I still struggle with, because there are times where like I get big leagued with stuff, and there's still definitely heights that I have not reached that I plan on reaching, that I will, but where I feel a little like, I feel like I've at least earned like a conversation about this, or just get bummed out, or you start to take things personally and don't realize like all the other things that are going, around within it. And I think that we also assume things like too quickly, and that also comes with taking things personally, which was one of the strongest things that I've learned to have be a continuing thing to work on, is to just push past that and realize that there's nothing that you should actually take personally. Which can get pretty deep into the weeds with how to approach that. But I firmly believe in that after having experienced the difference in it. And a simple way to say it is like, there's not much value that will come out of you taking something personally in that situation. Yeah. You're still going to be in the same place that you were, except you're letting that individual put you in a place that isn't moving forward, but is rather dwelling on what's not happening, rather than figuring out, another way around it. It doesn't do any of us any good to be worried about that or take offense to something. And just say, okay, that's cool, I'm going to figure out another way around it. Now that's a lot easier said than done. Sure. So when you say that, is it as easy as doing that? I would say it's as simple as saying it, but it's not as easy as just saying it. It definitely takes like the action around it. And it's something that I still like continue to struggle with, even with as much as I've worked on my mindset and work on it on a daily basis. It's part of my like morning ritual, is reminding myself of these principles that have really allowed me to help move forward and find some really great fulfillment in life. But I still get in those places where like my wife knows that there's a couple times a year that I'm going to get bummed out and tell her like, man, I feel like my career's over. Yeah. You just get in that funk, and it's obviously not true. And like things pick right back up, and, it's all great. But you start to get those feelings and it's, I think a little bit of it is the curse of the artist, of just that idea of, self-doubt that we have to continue to try to work past and break out of.
Dude, 100%, man. And that was a fantastic answer. I apologize if the question was a little bit rambling. I don't know if it was
I think it's a great question.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. So what I heard in there also is like, so just to distill it down into like a real world example, let's say and I'm repeating this just to make sure that I heard you correctly. So let's say you have a goal right now to get in maybe a collaboration with a artist that is bigger than someone that you've worked with before now, and that is not going the way you had hoped it would, and it could be perceived as big leagued, and you could potentially take that personally, like there's something wrong with your personal skill set, or you could say, you could be aware of the fact that there's something else going on, that maybe it's just not, and that something else could be a million different things. Maybe they just prefer someone else's style, or I think there's a lot of loyalty in, in obviously in apparel and then in music as well. And maybe people are just loyal to their person and it has nothing to do with you. Am I right in saying, like, if that particular situation was to happen to you, that's how you would say to go about it, is to not take it personally, but to think about the other angles of which you could be not getting that particular job at the moment?
I think the ultimate place is just to get in a mindset where you just don't take it personally, period.
Perfect.
You don't have to go through that.
Yeah.
But starting out, it's a really great practice to say, to switch the perspective and say, okay, this isn't about me. There's a good chance that like this could be happening, or they already have that, that thing taken care of, or it just wasn't like the right timing. But what I really look for is like what I can learn out of it, rather than being upset and being like, oh man, this didn't happen. So I sort of do a play-by-play and I go back. Okay, so like, how did that conversation start? What did I say in that conversation? What do the details lead to? Can I pinpoint a place where maybe we've got pushed off track, where I might have lost that opportunity because of something that I said or a way that I presented something? How can I improve my presentation in the future and be able to have a better shot, the next time that opportunity comes up? And then just over time, and this is just a matter of experience, over time, you have that first big thing like fall through and it sucks, but then the next thing comes up and you're like, oh, okay, well, more of these things exist. It's not that my world's over, but in that moment, It feels like everything is over,
Yep.
I can give you an example without using names, but I had a legendary band that I grew up listening to that would be like a dream to work with, and randomly got a referral from someone to work on a project with them when they were in town. And I hooked it all up and made it happen. We found a place. This is before I owned my own studio, so I was working out of a lot of other studios around town, and we found a place to make it happen. I brought them out there, set everything up. I was so stoked. The vibe was going great. And then there were a number of like technical issues with that studio. It wasn't my studio. It was a studio that I rented. And there was a bunch of things that weren't working for like the workflow of that artist. And so over the course of a few hours, like the session didn't go very well. They didn't get very much done. And they ended up being pretty bummed out, but fortunately they knew that it wasn't 100% my fault, but it doesn't matter. You're the one that's there. So it just leaves sort of a uncomfortable, sort of thing there. And then it just, the session didn't go, very well. And so I was super deflated at the end of it. I was like, man, did I bring them to the wrong place? Where did I screw this up? And then I couldn't really get in touch with them again, and sort of lost, connection with them. And it looked like something that might develop into a little bit of a relationship at first. So I was just like, super bummed, and just dwelled on it for quite a while. And this was a few years ago. And like 2 days ago, their new manager called me, and that person that leads that band thought of me when they moved to town and called the book my new studio.
Dude.
And it was a really great revelation
to
look back and be like, man, all of that crap that you were worried about, it was not about you. They understood. It didn't have anything to do with you. You tried to bail them out last minute to find a great spot and hook it up. And It just, they understood that that didn't work out. And while in the moment they might've been a little, bummed about it and it wasn't a great vibe, they didn't forget about you. And a few years later, they're calling you back, and now they're in town and they want to work on their new single. So
wow, dude,
that stuff that can turn around in that way. And it's just a really great example of how there's no use in taking the stuff personally and letting it, holding it with you. But the flip side of that is that there's a balance with everything. So we can't just totally screw something up and be like, well, it's all good, man. We still have to hold ourselves accountable. So there's an accountability within that. But I mean things that are beyond your control, that are just situations that occur that were not a result of your necessarily mistake, but just maybe something that doesn't work out the way that you wanted. And then you sort of hold that in you and take it personally. And anyone in the music industry or entertainment industry in a whole knows that you're going to get a million no's before you get a yes. And you're going to get turned down for all kinds of things, and everything is going to seem like it's about to break, and then it all falls apart so many times before it actually kind of culminates into these things. And if every time that happens you hold in the pain and the resentment and the deflation that happens from that, and don't come out of it with like a learning and understanding and like separating yourself from that pain, then you're totally going to break down and quit,
dude,
and not get through it. And so that's something that I think like out of necessity, because I believe I have no other option than to excel at what I was meant to do, that I learned. But I was fortunate to be able to kind of have like an upbringing and just have the right books come to me and the right sort of mentors say the right things to me over time. And so if someone hasn't had that experience yet, hopefully that like that story and explanation can be a way to help them start to rethink how they deal with things, with adversity and things that don't go right.
Dude. Yes, bravo, dude. That's a fucking brilliant answer, man.
Brother.
And yeah, man, if you're listening out there, I would go back and rewind
Chew on that.
past 15 minutes and take some notes on that. I'm personally going to do that, actually.
Absolutely.
Dude,
Absolutely.
yes, that's fantastic, man.
Beautiful, my man. All right, well, just due to time, I want to kind of keep this moving along.
Yes.
Because we could go deep into the rabbit hole.
We really could.
Talk about this, and believe it, that's probably what we want to do. But for time's sake,
I'm all about it.
a few more questions for you, brother. And I noticed you were you talked about like the one person saying, well, home studios are taking over. I don't think so. There's something about actual recording studios. There's an experience, an atmosphere, a vibe about that. Think of all the greatest bands that would go in that studio and just make magic. Like, you can do stuff at a home studio, that's fine, but let's talk about the record shop here. So I could go in there and I can get artist development done there. I can do live production there. I can make a record there, an EP, whatever. So let's talk about the record shop a little bit, and then I want to get into what is the one, like, probably the most important thing that you want to get out of that artist that comes in, or what you can do for that artist that comes into the record shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the record shop started out of me not being able to find work, and then starting to build a little bit of this freelance thing that was happening, and reading a lot of books and thinking a lot about branding and industry reputation. And I had an idea that if I created a brand around what I did that had a really purposeful mission, that I would be able to maybe provide a little bit more like legitimacy to what I was doing, and to be able to grow to the level that I wanted to, as opposed to having to rely on like one gig to the next to get me by. And so that was really like the foundational thing around it. And I guess I also just thought it would be cool to like just have like a company instead of just like me, doing that. And so I started to come up with this like idea of like what would be a way that I could serve artists in a larger way. And that started to get into when I read that quote from William James and wanted to really create art that would outlast us. And then I started focusing a lot on this experience that I had as a freelance engineer that was working with up-and-coming artists that didn't necessarily have a producer. I was always passionate about production, but most of my experience until I had moved to Nashville was as an engineer. So I would get in with these singer-songwriters or with a band or with a hip-hop artist, and they would want feedback, not just like, hey, does the EQ on this sound good, or like which microphone should we use, or how should we mic up the guitar, but like, how does this melody feel? Does this arrangement feel good? How does the tempo feel to you? Does this inspire you? And so we would get deeper into these sort of things, and I'd start giving them feedback and direction, and building these deeper relationships beyond just being a technical equipment operator that was capturing the sound, but being more of like, let's create let's capture a moment and an experience,
Yeah.
And so as we started to dive into that, I got really passionate about that side of things and started focusing on my big focus whenever I'd first meet an artist is really learning about who they were artistically, where their influences came from, and what their vision was for whatever we were working on together. And even if that was just like a basic singer-songwriter demo, I didn't start the session with like, okay, cool, the mic's there, go sit down and play. I would ask them some questions about the song, what was the inspiration behind it, who are they trying to pitch the song to if it wasn't for them, what is the sort of like overall vision that you have for it. And then that would help me make some like technical decisions about maybe like how to mic it, or what sort of effects to put on it, or like, that kind of thing. But then it would dive in more to like arrangement and like the tempo, the feel, And then if we were building a track around it, the instrumentation that, that would go into it, I got really excited about, doing that. And that's where it grew into this idea of more of like a production company than like just a recording studio. So through developing that relationship as a producer/engineer with artists, I also started to recognize that by the end of this process of working on a project with an artist, now they needed to shoot a music video, they needed to do a photo shoot, they needed to build like out a marketing plan and promo for it. They needed to start working on like a tour and like, all these things that happen. When I'm talking specifically about early on in my career with up and coming artists. Yeah. Now like okay, cool. I got my recording done. Now I need to figure out like next step, like how do I get people to listen to it and get in front of it. And so then I would hear all these horror stories about them trying to go out and find like a videographer that ran away with their money and never gave them their video, and like the photographer that they paid for this huge shoot and then took them like 6 months to send them an edit of 3 pictures back.
Yes.
And and all this stuff, right? And I was like,
$1,000 later.
That really sucks. And then they would have trouble like explaining to them like the technical side of maybe like how they would want the video like color treated, or they didn't understand that like for a photographer that if they wanted like 3 different backgrounds, they were going to need to pay for 3 locations, not for like 1 studio shoot. And then they didn't understand why they weren't, getting this sort of stuff. So I started to hear these things and it's like, man, how great would it be if artists had someone that could just help them put together the team around them. And again, speaking with artists that aren't in that position, I work with a lot of artists now that do, have that team around them, but the ones that that don't and don't have those connections yet, and just be able to kind of work through finding those people quicker, and then also being able to communicate their artistic vision that they have for their video or for their graphic or for their logo or their graphics or their photography easier. Yeah. Because maybe they don't have the technical terms, so they're trying to describe it. And then I found that a lot of artists get a little insecure about it, and then they just sort of let the person do whatever because they don't want to sound dumb because they don't know how to say what they want, Yeah. And so I started just really paying attention to these ways that artists, interact with the different types of contractors that they hire for building stuff. And I thought, man, what if I created this really great team of people that thought like me but were masters at videography and photography and promotion and website design and graphics. And so that's what I did. I started going out and as I was at those shows trying to meet those artists, there was a videographer there that was filming trying to meet the artists. Boom. And so I was like, hey man, you look like you're hustling like I am and like really passionate about helping people out. And then I'd see their work and then start to collaborate. And then so that's where the idea of the multimedia production facet of the record shop grew out of, was being able to support artists in a greater way, beyond that. And so that it started so really small, just sort of making connections. And then that's where I started becoming like a project manager for things. So an artist could come to me with a concept and say, hey, we want to do this like live video shoot in a barn outside of town somewhere, but we need to figure out a way. We want to like record it live. We don't want it to be like a goofy, like pre-taped lip sync thing. So we need to figure out a way to like capture it all, and then film it. And we want to give it this like old, like 70s look to it. Like, do you know anybody that could do that? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I get all the people together and make it happen. Like our company handles the audio side. We contract a company to do the video side, and things started to build that way, which was really cool. And then through getting that experience and building those connections and reputation for that, now I just get calls where someone's like, hey, we need to do a video shoot. Can you help us like hook it up? And so now we do a lot of the stuff in house. Before it was just sort of like a networking sort of thing, but it was really just going back to that initial thing of value. Mm-hmm. How can I offer more value to the people that I work with? At that time I didn't have the resume that was going to be super impressive, but I had a level of passion and an added level of value that I could offer to people beyond my technical skill set. So they knew that they could come to me and rely on me for like what I'm really good at, but then they could also rely on me to be a part of their team and support them in creating stuff beyond that. And so that's how the record shop grew into what it is, and why we handle all of those things. So I didn't set out to be a jack of all trades. I don't hold the camera. I don't set up the lighting for the photography shoot, and do those stuff. I don't try to be halfway good at those things. I produce records, and that's what I focus my time on. But I also help artists achieve their artistic vision in any type of content that they want to create. And I surround myself with really incredible people that do really good work and rely on them to be masters at their skill sets. And that's the vision of how the record shop grew, was just to be a really great resource. Now from that's like my artistic side of why, I got into it. And then the business side is, the recording studio business is tough. It's up and down. It's sometimes seasonal. It hasn't been as much in the past few years. At least, it hasn't been for me for quite a while, but there were times where it was very like, kind of hit or miss and up and down, and you're kind of relying on one thing to the next thing. So when I started diving deeper into this multifaceted kind of thing, I could work with an artist year round and develop this long-term flow of things as opposed to work with an artist once a year. And that really led to much more consistency. Nice. To where now there's not much of, I say very like humbly, I don't mean to sound egotistical, there's not much of like a concern about, are we going to be booked today? It's just sort of like, what are we going to be focusing on? And that's super exciting to be able to dive into that. I wouldn't necessarily like recommend that like that's the business plan that like every individual should have, is try to turn it into that. But what I think you can take out of that is the idea of finding your niche and then diversifying the value that you can provide within it. And I talk a lot about that because I discovered as I was preparing for a workshop that I was doing a couple of years ago, that was really a big part of the growth of my career and allowing me to be able to focus on just projects that I wanted to work on and be really passionate about rather than chasing the next gig. It was just looking for the right thing, to work on, and having enough of those pieces moving where you can support artists in different ways. For me, that was how it helped. And for every creative or for every artist or, producer, engineer, it might be a little bit of a different story, but I think that principle can always be applied of just figuring out how to expand the value that you're providing within the niche, that you have. And my niche just became serving the vision of the artist in whatever way that I have the capability of doing that. So what do I look for what do I hope to achieve with an artist that I work with? I want them to leave feeling that they got exactly what was in their head. And I love the beauty of that idea. The idea that we can be inspired by some sort of experience or emotion or feeling or interaction with someone, and then have this seed planted in our mind of this idea of art. And then for someone to be able to come to me and explain that idea and share it with me at a very foundational level, whether it's sitting down in front of me and playing their guitar and singing their heart out, or sending me over a work tape that they did on their tour bus as they were traveling from one city to another, or just coming over and just spewing out this whole like crazy idea that they have, and me just sitting there like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I got this idea and that idea. And then we go through this whole process, and every step is so exciting because it takes you closer to that final result. So I love diving into artists with pre-production, which is a huge part of my process. I firmly believe, regardless of how large of a project you're doing, that preparation is so important. And it allows for magic to enter the room when you get into really capturing something, because you've worked out all those little minute or little debatable details before. But you still allow room for creation. So I like to create a blueprint in preparation. I don't lay concrete. I don't set the foundation. It's just a blueprint. It's a sketch of what we're going to hope to accomplish. And I do that with recording projects, with video projects, with career development, like campaign projects. We just focus out on like, what is our basic, idea? And then the next step is diving into starting to build that. So it could be the tracking session with the band and the artist, or it could be the first video shoot, and then we move into like vocals and post-production and like that whole stage. And every one of those steps, we're getting closer to this final thing. And I'm always checking back with the artist through every step. I don't just like wait till the end and be like, so do you like it? We're always having that conversation. I'm like, what do you dig? Is there anything that's not there yet? What are you missing? And a lot of times I really have to push artists to like be harder on themselves or harder on me. And I want to pick out all those little things. If there's anything that's missing, let's dive into it. Let's work harder on this. Let's get it there. And then once we get to that final stage and we're listening back to the final master of a record, or we're watching that video, what I want to see is like goosebumps or tears or like something that tells me, oh my God, this is exactly what I was going for. And if I hear them say that and they tell me that, then my job's done. If not, then I'm pushing harder to figure out what I missed and make sure that we go back and get it there. So my goal when I finish working with every artist is to have that moment where I can look at them and really know that they got exactly what they came to me for. and that there's nothing that they're going to have to explain away when they play it for someone or show it to someone. It's going to speak for itself in every little detail.
Dude, that's
Beautiful.
incredible, man. Seriously. I love that last thing that you said. There's nothing they have to explain away. Isn't there nothing worse than like, yeah, man, we got the record done, but like, hey, before you listen to this, man, just know, things were a little shaky, and that's the dude. It's the worst.
Right on, brother. Right on. All right. Well, that'll do it for tonight, gang. If you like what you heard, if something moved you, if you learned something valuable from this episode, please rate and review us. Your love means the world. It helps us do what we do, because what we do is for the YOU. If you're interested in advertising for this show, please contact us at bombersandsleeves@gmail.com. Get yourself updated on all of our apparel, future product lines, and our blog by visiting bombersandsleeves.com. We are always most active on our Instagram, so if you are not following us, please do at BombCast Official or Bombers in Sleeves. We want to thank our very special guest one more time, Mr. Sean Giovanni. Thank you, brother. Find the latest and greatest of what's going down over at The Record Shop by following them on Instagram at The Record Shop Studios and by visiting therecordshopnashville.com. Y'all stay safe out there, and until next time, bomb your boundaries, baby.